This week on the 77% Street Debate.
If we die from hunger, where will the government get the support that they usually get from us?
Drought is obviously a front and center issue here, and you can see that it is already having real consequences.
This is a very big debate to the pastoralist communities. We are most hit.
The conversations around global climate issues and the climate change is not a few minutes conversation. It's really something that needs community to sit together, create localized solutions to their own problems.
Hello and welcome back to the 77%. In his first inaugural international address, Kenya's President William Ruto vowed that climate change would be central to this government. Well, we're here in Turkana in the north of Kenya to find out what challenges lay ahead of him for this promise. And I have some lovely people here to try and explain what exactly is happening in this region. And I'd like to start with Lucia. She's an agronomic engineer. But just to give us an overview of the climate profile of this area, what is the nature of the earth, the weather patterns, and how has that changed over time?
So this is a county which is an arid and semi-arid area, and the community's way of livelihoods is highly affected by the climate change. Because when we have the change in weather patterns, that means that we lack vegetation cover for the livestock. We also have challenges with water because for crop production, we rely a lot on boreholes, that is for irrigation. And when we have extreme weather conditions, that means that the water levels also go down.
Well, thank you so much for that summary. And I want to come now to Mama here who lives in this area. She's a native Turkana woman. And I just want to find out from you, Mama, what have you seen changing over the years? When were you planting? When was it raining? And how has that changed since?
We've been having a serious drought that has killed our livestock. Our people are now hungry, especially our women and children. We are only living by the grace of God.
Can she remember a time when there was no drought, when it was absolutely okay, the rains were predictable, they were still able to farm a little bit?
Sometime back, it rained once in a while. We even practiced agriculture, growing some sorghum using rainwater. But the last 6 years, we've not been receiving enough rain. So our farms have dried up, and now we're poor and left with nothing.
So drought is obviously a front and center issue here, and you can see that it is already having real consequences. This, by the way, being the 5th consecutive failed rainy season that this region of the Great Horn of Africa is experiencing. So Clement, I want to come to you because you're the ranking member from the Ministry of Environment in this region. How bad is the situation statistically? Talking about figures, how many people are sleeping hungry, going without water because of what we're discussing here?
Climate change is real in Turkana County. Since 1969, the temperature in Turkana County have increased by 2 degrees. This is a purely pastoralist county. 70% of the people in this county depend on livestock production. And then the remaining 15 to 20% are fishermen, traders, and they practice agriculture. Since January up to now, we've not experienced any rain. So there's erratic rainfall pattern in Turkana County as compared to 5 years ago.
So Kimberly, let me come to you because you are a radio host here in this region. Are you hearing the impact of what we're talking about? Food insecurity, lack of rains, even flooding in some cases. How is that affecting the social structure of the area?
We have visited some areas. And actually we have seen the impact. Just like 50 kilometers from here, like 3 weeks ago, we went and met people, a group of 58 people who ate carcasses of a camel. Wow. Yeah, and it really affected them because now they ended up with issues of diarrhea, vomiting, and all that. And when you wonder, why are you people eating this kind of food? And then they'll tell you, there's no food. We look right, we look left, and we cannot find anything.
Taudi, I'm just trying to figure out, looking around, it might be difficult for somebody to imagine how do you survive in this environment and why stay in this environment if it's so harsh?
I think we as pastoralists came here and we sat here, and that's the way of living for ourselves. So we can't move from maybe here to Kitale or Kainuk because there's that aspect of insecurity also.
You're talking about conflict because of grazing. Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, the conflict between the various community here in Turkana. So that aspect of insecurity brings of food insecurity, because if there's no food, there's insecurity came in. So because there's no pasture, there's no water, so they must go and take it from there.
Okay, so you've brought up something really important, which is one of the impacts of climate change being conflict. But I want to come to you, Dominic, because there's another phenomenon, which is climate migration. And I know parts of your family have been forced to move from one of these areas into another one in search of literally greener pastures.
At the moment, we are talking about pastoralists moving from Kenya, crossing the border to Uganda, a place called Kobebe, in search for pasture.
And this is what is causing the conflict we're hearing about.
Yeah, exactly. This is what is causing the conflict, because when you go there, of course, you'll find people. So when the other community, the Turkana community now that is moving to their place in search for pasture, it creates a situation whereby they want water for their animals, they want pasture, while the same community also wants the same. So it creates some conflict.
Okay, Vicky, let me come to you. We've been quiet on this side for a little bit. The women and how they're affected, because yesterday as we were walking around in this homestead behind, we heard that the men were not around because they've gone to look for pasture elsewhere, and so the women have been left by themselves. What is that doing to the women of this community, such strain?
Our community has been pastoral since time immemorial, and one thing that this issue of climate change and the frequent migration in search of pasture and water has really contributed to polygamous marriages and also absenteeism of parents in their children's life. And you know how that affects the milestone and the development of children, as well as the educational background. You find most of the pastoral group, that is now the indigenous women, their children don't even get to go to school because we believe that in our community it is the father that disciplines the baby. So it's really brings about so much lack of development, community development, because if we lack adequate children going to school and we don't get the father figure daily in our houses, because the men can go up to 3 months, they can go up to 6 months, because it can take you even 30 kilometers to meet the next borehole.
You're talking about very important issues here, including how dry it is and the difficulty to get food and water. And I want to ask Mama, like today, if you wanted to get water, where do you go and find it? How far is it? And what do you do on a daily basis to sustain yourself, to feed yourself and your family?
We get water from far away. This village has no water. We fetch drinking water from Napu, about 10 kilometers away from here. And once we fetch the water, we go looking for wild fruits in the bush along the Turkwell River. At the moment, we're only eating fruits from a local palm tree that we call engol. We make juice from it and mix it with maize flour. That's how we survive. We used to have other fruits, but they dried up and are no longer there.
So, Brizan, finally we're coming to hear your voice. We're hearing some very dark things on the other side, that there's food insecurity, malnutrition, and maybe undernutrition, possibly young girls getting married off early because they basically don't have any other choices. So I guess my question is, where do we even begin to resolve this? Where? And you're busy saying that perhaps looking at contemporary solutions like IT is a way forward, but can we even do that yet?
Good question. I think the debate on climate change has not done any good to our local communities. The debate on climate change, sometimes I say it's a professional debate. that only serves the needs of a few clink of people who aims to gain and profit from this kind of debate. Because if this debate was meaningful, then this debate would be translated into the local people's lives. Because here is where it all starts. But even in all this, then what are we left with? We're only left with innovations. How do we ensure that we create innovative ideas that will target and benefit the young people of the present generation? Because the young people of the present generation are the 100% population of our future generation. And so if we don't do something to the present generation, then there's nothing we are talking about. Pastoralism is getting into we shall not be speaking of it in the next 20 years if the situation does not change.
He's made a very important point, Brizan, that local and indigenous communities are left out of some of these benefits, are left out of conversations regarding them. Do you think this is true, and how do we remedy that?
I work in the Partner Stakeholder Forum, and one of the challenges that are key or that are evident is the fact that even when we come up with solutions, they are not community-centered. So you come up to a place and then you're like, okay, this place maybe they need food, and then you're like, okay, well, we will establish farms, but you're not keen on what strategies can you use in that the solutions come from the community. So communities have to be involved right from the start.
So I want to ask Maba, because earlier there was a charge made that we're not asking the indigenous people what they really want. So I need to ask you, if you were the president of this country, what do you think you would give the people of Turkana to try and solve this problem of climate change?
Sasa emambere angaragini ania yakare ange yakare bere yakare bere.
So, if I was the president and I had the resources, I would help the people, because leaders are elected to help. This village and the entire country needs help in terms of water, food, and other things. That's why we elect leaders.
So I want to ask the people who are seated at the back there, and maybe you can help me. Can they remember the last time a local leader came and sat with them about climate change? If they can remember, just raise their hands. No. Oh, she actually looks disgusted, I guess because of the state of leadership. So Clement, I have to come back to you. There are so many policies. There's even a beautiful climate change act in this county, and yet people are still feeling disconnected from the leadership. How is that possible?
Initially, we didn't have frameworks in place. We didn't have structures which we could actually communicate to the public, to the masses, on matters to do with the climate change resilience and adaptation, and even early warning. And that's why, as the local government, county government of Turkana, we thought it was very necessary for us to come up with the policies, act, and even climate change fund regulation. The county government came up with these laws and formed even the committees. This committee, the World Climate Change Committee, initially they were not there. This law was enacted last year, October, November. We've so far formed 30 committees. We are currently training the committee so that they understand, because one of their mandate is to sensitize the community, to have meetings at the local level, and I'm sure the committee will come and meet this community in future.
So let me ask Brizan, and then I'm going to come to you, because as he was speaking, you were actually laughing as though what he was saying was fiction. Why is that?
No. I was, because I am one person who has also participated in one of the climate change initiatives by the county government. The truth of the matter is a lot of investment is being invested into the climate change initiatives, especially by the Ministry of Environment of this county. And some of us have been privileged to be part of that conversation. The question which we should be asking ourselves, who are the right people to really participate in such kind of conversations? Is it those who can speak English and be invited in big hotels to discuss climate issues? Or is it the real people down on the ground who should be the majority of the participants in such conversations? And you asked earlier before, even this issue is not just about the county government. It's about the whole approach, how the climate change conversations is happening. This is not
at
about
the national level.
At the national level and at the international level. And as Vicky mentioned at the beginning, Turkana County is really vast, it's really big, and there are not enough resources to reach everybody. So the truth of the matter is, yes, conversations are happening, but also the sad reality is we are not reaching everybody, but something is happening.
So let me ask Dominic a question, because as young people, isn't that our responsibility to be that bridge between the older generation and maybe the ones who are not speaking the languages we're speaking in boardrooms and, you know, being that go-between? Why isn't that happening?
Well, the youth have a role of making sure that the information they get from the net, the many things that they learn from schools, the whole debate about the climate change, are supposed to do it. They're supposed to put it in a local context and explain to the people. But you see, as young people, we have associations, we have caucuses that we use to advocate, we use to do a lot of things. We also need support. We need support in terms of logistics, in terms of transportation, in terms of that capacity to come and talk to the people.
Let me come back to Kimberly then, because you did bring up the media. When you're discussing these issues, it's probably in the local dialect. Are we speaking boardroom language to people who already know the issues in a different terminology?
Okay, that's one big challenge. Most of the time, we try and get expertise, at least somebody who knows and who can translate it in a way that the common mwananchi can understand. So, because now we live like here in Central, they are mixed. We have locals from other counties. So we mix Swahili and the local dialects so that at least everyone can get to understand what we are trying to say.
Maybe just add in something. It's important to note that even the impact of climate change in itself hinders community participation. Take an example of what Mama was saying. She has to wake up at 6, she has to fetch water, she has to go and look for food. The conversations around global climate issues and the climate change is not a few minutes conversation. It's really something that needs community to sit together, take their time, create localized solutions to their own problems. That is the time we are talking about, and that is the most important time, especially for a pastoralist. A pastoralist is somebody who has to walk 30, 50 kilometers looking for water, looking for pastures. Time is so limited for these communities to start even engaging in such kind of conversation.
So what is actually working? Can you give me examples of adaptation and mitigation, things that are being done which are actually working?
We are not the cause of this climate change. The global know that the cause. We are suffering as African countries, and specifically in Turkana County, we've experienced the climate change. For us to adapt in these climatic conditions, it's all about adaptation and resilience. And that's why the county budget, almost 80% of county budget, is allocated towards climate change adaptation. How? County government is doing water projects. For example, we've drilled over 1,900 boreholes just to create resilience, to ensure people are getting water. We're implementing climate smart agriculture. We're having programs on improvement of breeds so that we can have climate resilient breeds in Turkana County, and so many other interventions that we are doing.
Okay, so Lucia, we've heard what government is doing, but when you look at countries like Egypt and Israel, you get the sense that we could be doing so much more.
Agricultural production, especially in the northern part of the country, it requires a lot of investment. Talking of boreholes, we have over 1,000 boreholes, as Director had mentioned, both those drilled by partners, and those drilled by the county government. Drilling a borehole is a huge, huge investment because you have to drill, you have to equip. And it is so sad that so many of these boreholes currently do not have water. As much as currently there is a lot we are doing both as partners and the county government, our efforts are actually diminished. Because what more can we do right now other than have emergency responses?
We're hearing a lot about money and investment, and rightfully so. Where do we go from here? If the international community does not contribute and we don't have enough money, where do we go next?
Yeah, that's the sad part of this conversation, that there's economy, politics, and there's the real realities of the ground. The major contributors of the problems we are facing today, unfortunately, are the ones still holding the largest wealth, money, and resources that we need. And so it's a balance between letting this money go and holding to what we believe and what we gain so much into. So there's no honest conversations around funding issues around climate change. One, because people are afraid to lose their traditional source of power, of money, energy, and all these things. But again, coming locally, there are so many conflicting interests that needs to be met, that the governments are grappling with, that the county government is grappling with. For example, now, what do you do as a county governor, for example, for a county like Turkana? Do you go for a mitigating measures, or do you go for long-lasting solutions that we'll have tomorrow? So these are the issues that people are really grappling with, and they're difficult to address.
Earlier, I said that we would end up with solutions. And I know some of you are already doing things within your various spheres of influence to try and change the situation. Let's hear your solutions, please.
If women can be involved in the entire conversation and even in providing solutions in every household that we have a woman. In our family, we are 3 women. If we plant every year 3 trees, using the available water that we use for domestic use, we will, at the end of 3 years, we will have more trees in our home, and this will help in improving the forest cover. Yeah. Then number 2, on building and construction, there is a lot of construction of fences using this indigenous tree that takes over 30 years for it to mature. And there is a lot of deforestation taking place, contributed by men, because they're the ones that are selling these things to also help in substituting the households, because the
pastoralism.
Because pastoralism is no longer practiced or is going extinct because of the different climatic conditions we have. So if we can have other methods of building, that is by reducing cutting of the indigenous trees that are providing forest cover in Turkana County, and I think this will help.
Let me close this conversation by hearing Mama's views. I just want to hear from you. You said earlier what you would do as a leader, but what do you want from the people of Kenya? What do you want as a woman in Turkana, and what can be done by the world to help alleviate the situation that you're in because of climate change?
We have a saying here that if a daughter feels hungry and the father is the one providing for her, she'll cry when she's hungry. So the government should help us. Our animals have died. Our people are hungry. If we die from hunger, where will the government get the support that they usually get from us?
I'd like to wrap this up. So if there's anybody who has some solutions for me, this is the moment. Dominic, let's hear from you.
Well, I have last comments. I think one of the things that people need to do is to move these discussions from New York, Davos, Brussels. This is a very big debate to the pastoralist communities. We are most hit by the drought. This discussion should be discussed in Marsabit, Lodwar, or even Garissa. Because it is not just livelihoods that are affected. There is a huge cultural significance that cattle have to the Turkana people, to the Somali people,
sacred,
to the
actually.
many people. Yeah. So I mean, if there is something that affects their livelihood and their culture, I mean, this is a very, very big problem. So it is a big debate. We are appealing to the world leaders to bring this discussion home to where the problem is.
Really, this was never going to be an easy conversation. It's not an easy one globally, it's not an easy one locally. But one thing has come out pretty clearly from my panel here, that we need to do more talking, and more talking to each other and not at each other. I thank the local guys here who joined us today. I thank the panel for braving the heat, and I especially thank you for watching.